Okay, then, moving right along in Rudolf Steiner's outline of esoteric science, um, which is a very large, long book. It's sort of his Bible, or the closest thing he had to it. I want to move to the next chapter, which is called The Makeup of the Human Being. It's quite complex, and it reads very much like German philosophy should read. It's pretty dense. So I'll go through it and try to explicate it to the best of my abilities. It's absolutely essential to grasp, though, for understanding Rudolf Steiner. And so what he starts by saying is that he's going to have four different models of the human subtle body. A threefold model, which will be body, soul, and spirit. Then he's going to have a fourfold model, where he's going to break that up into four different subtle bodies. And then he's going to have a sevenfold model, and then finally a ninefold model. It just depends on what you divide and split up, essentially having to do with the I, the ego, um, the self. So he starts by saying that we have to take into consideration death. Death is where everything begins. And the mystery of death is probably what inspired human art, burial, and culture, as Spengler says in The Decline of the West. And so you have to consider death and the relationship of the physical human body to death, because it's made up of minerals, that the skeleton is made up of minerals, and it's what we share in common with the mineral world. And there's something in the physical human body that's constantly resisting this hardening, this mineralization process, this calcification process that is constantly threatening us. And the thing that is doing that is, of course, the etheric body now. So he has this idea that there's an etheric body. The physical body is basically a series of pieces. Just imagine a skeleton. But the etheric body is the prana field of chi. It's what is tapped into with acupuncture. I've seen it in a man's actual body through psychedelic mushrooms. I've seen the actual iridescence etheric body. And the etheric body is what holds the physical body together and gives it shape and form. There's a lot more to it. It also is connected with the human psyche as well, because it's going to have to do with things like habit. And it basically is the same thing as Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic fields. If anyone remembers his idea of morphogenetic fields, it's pretty much the same thing, with the exception that it's confined to living things, whereas Sheldrake's morphogenetic fields have to do with physical matter and all these other things that resonates through time. But if it's applied to just living beings, it's what we share with plants. Plants are primarily physical matter that has been organized by an etheric body. And just as death was connected to the physical body, so now sleep, eternal sleep, is connected with the etheric body in plants. They never wake up. They're alive, and you can do things with them like a Venus flytrap, but it's not consciousness. It's not consciously aware of what it's doing. It's acting on instinct, and the etheric body is then what we share with all living things. Everything that's alive has an etheric body that gives it shape, form, function, and gives it its habits, its behavioral habits and temperaments through time. So keep that in mind. It is connected with the psyche as well as the actual organization of the physical body. And if the etheric body separates from the physical body, then you die. That's it. Then you die, and then you begin to revert back to the state of physical matter, the mineral world. So we need the etheric body to keep us alive. But now the etheric body, in turn, is illuminated by the astral body. The astral body is what gives it consciousness. And the interaction of the astral body um, is what we share in common with animals. Everything that's awake, everything that has a sleep-wake cycle, a sleep-wake cycle has an astral body. Basically everything with a nervous system, everything that's alive has an astral body that interacts with the etheric body and illuminates it with consciousness. So the astral body has to do with consciousness, and it has to do with the sleep-wake cycle. In order to have that waking consciousness, it has to be able to go to sleep. Um, Now this distinction reminds me between the astral body and the etheric body, Oswald Spengler's distinction in the Decline of the West between what he called Wachsein and Dasein, and he used Dasein in a way that's very different from the way Heidegger used it. For him, Dasein has to do with instinct, with the pulse, beat, rhythm, the circulation of the blood and the genitals, basically the Dionysian world. That's pretty much what Steiner means by the etheric body. And then the Apollonian world of waking consciousness is Wachsein for Spengler, whereas for Steiner it's the astral body. The astral body contains consciousness, but it doesn't contain memory, just consciousness of the present moment. Animals have this. This is what we share with animals, and they don't have memory, according to Steiner. They just have consciousness of the present moment. Then we have the I. Humans now have the ego, the I, das Ich. He says it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it the I, you can call it the self, whatever you want to call it. But human beings have this I now, which is equipped with memory. And so it has remembering and forgetting. So and in a way, forgetting is analogous to what in the astral body had been sleep. Sleep wipes away the day's events. Forgetting wipes away things that have happened to you so that you can clear the way for new things to come along and happen to you. So forgetting and then remembering is analogous then to waking in the astral body. But human beings have memory. Animals do not have this. Human beings have the ability to perceive an event and remember it and recall it and ruminate on it and dwell on it. So memory is absolutely essential then to the I. Then, so that's the fourfold model. The physical body, which we share with the mineral world, the etheric body, which we share with the plant world, the astral body, which we share with the animal world, and the I, the ego, which is unique to the human being, uniquely spiritual element in the human being. Now, he begins to subdivide the model now by splintering the I, what he calls the soul. The I is basically the soul now, whereas the body consisted of the physical body, the etheric body, and the astral body. So he's got those three components there. And with the soul, the I, basically the same thing, there are going to be three components also. The sentient soul. The sentient soul has to do with perception of the outer world, and it's connected to the astral body, because the astral body provides the consciousness of the moment, but the sentient soul comes in and is able to extract permanence. And so it's that part of memory which is able to perceive an event and to remember it. And so it's able to grasp permanence through time. So the sentient soul is closely related and interbound with the astral body. But then we have the intellectual soul proper, which is, of course, the neocortex. He says that's basically the I. That's what he means by the I, is pretty much the intellectual soul, the ability to cognize and think. That's pretty self-evident. But then, so he says these two components of the soul, the sentient soul and the intellectual soul, are outer directed. They're directed toward the examination of phenomena that happens out there in conjunction with the astral body. But this third component of the soul has to do with inner direction. It's the consciousness soul, and it is inner directed. So when the eye turns inward on itself, he doesn't give concrete examples, but I guess he's talking about things like yoga and meditation, regressive hypnosis. I don't know, whatever it is that causes the eye to turn inward and begin to perceive a spiritual world. So it starts to connect now with the next three components, which comprise the spirit, body, soul, spirit. And so the consciousness soul then forms a sort of portal to what he calls the spirit self. So the spirit self now is kind of a sublimation of the astral body. Once the eye does work on the astral body, which has to do with consciousness and memory, and begins to work on, because the astral body is basically the id as well. Sexual desire comes from it, hedonism and so forth. If the eye works on that astral body and begins to liberate it from the merely sensual, animalistic realm, then it begins to activate what he calls the spirit self. So now we have the first component of spirit. Remember, we've got three components for each of these: body, soul, and spirit. So now we've got the spirit self awakening in the individual. It's like moving up the chakras. It's very similar to the chakras. And so then the next component is the life spirit, which then it has to do with the eye's relationship to the etheric body, which, remember, has to do with memory in the sense of not conscious human memory, but that shapes things together. But within the human mind, it has to do with temperament. And if the eye works on the etheric body, it can change one's temperament. A temperament is not fixed, according to Steiner. It can change over time. You can have a religious conversion experience, which is the activation then, the relationship of the eye to the etheric body, and the activation then of the life spirit, which is higher than the spirit self. It's the next component up. And art too, he says, the aesthetic experience is connected with the activation of the life spirit. And then finally we have, of course, the physical body and the spirit body. They are at the two opposite extremes. The spirit body is the third component of the spirit, and the eye's relationship, doing work on the physical body, results in the formation of a spirit body. And he doesn't really give any examples in this chapter of that, so I'm not sure. I suppose he'll get to it at some point, what the spirit body actually is, but it has to do with the eye's relationship to working on one's physical body. So that is Steiner's model in this chapter. It's very complex. Body, soul, and spirit is the threefold model, and then the astral body, the etheric body, and the physical body. Then the eye, and then the last three, the spirit body, life spirit, and spirit body, gives you a sevenfold model. But then if you take the eye and splinter it into those three components of sentient soul, intellectual soul, and consciousness soul, now you have a ninefold model. So leave it up to a German to make metaphysics like this incredibly elaborate and complex. This dude was pretty sharp. So as the book unfolds, he will eventually, his equivalent to Jung's individuation process, he calls initiation. Going through these processes, working with these subtle bodies, is something that he calls initiation, and he will teach you later in the book specific skills. He'll give you very concrete things to do to start activating those upper aspects that go from the consciousness soul, which is the first truly spiritual awareness, down through those three components of the spirit.